There was a version of me years ago, before kids and before loss, who was very sure of herself. And I don't even have to try hard to picture her because she's still so clear in my mind. I remember how she moved through rooms, how she spoke with confidence, how she trusted herself. I was career-driven back then. I was speaking on stages at work, talking about women in leadership, purpose, vision, and growth. I was flying on company jets, traveling from location to location, being trusted with big responsibilities, winning awards and being recognized for my work. I walked into spaces knowing I belonged there. I had a spark. I had drive. I had a voice. And at the time, I didn't stop to name it or celebrate it. But looking back now, I realize how much I love that version of me. Not because she was perfect or because life was easy, but because I knew who I was. I felt grounded in my identity. And then life changed. Not all at once, and not in a way that felt dramatic at first, but in a way that settled deep into my body and in my spirit. And what I didn't realize right away was that grief wasn't just touching my heart, it was touching my sense of self. Hey friend, and welcome back to Highlight Your Healing. I'm Shannon Roan, certified grief coach and founder of J&J Journals. This podcast is for women navigating grief and learning to heal with faith. And today, we're talking about something that so many women experience, but don't always have the words for. We're talking about what it feels like when grief makes you forget who you are. When you start to feel disconnected from the woman you used to be and unsure of how to hold on to who you are now. For me, this shift became most noticeable after my ectopic pregnancy and pregnancy losses. And grief didn't show up the way I expected it to. It wasn't necessarily loud or obvious right away, and it didn't come rushing in all at once. It showed up quietly, slowly, and in ways that were easy to dismiss at first. I was depressed, but I didn't always call it that. I was exhausted in a way that rest didn't fix. My body felt heavy, and the spark I had always carried, the one people knew me for, felt dim. And that confused me because I had always been that girl. The driven one, the one with vision, the one who didn't shrink herself to make others feel comfortable. But suddenly, I didn't recognize myself. I wasn't dreaming the same way. I wasn't planning the same way, and I wasn't speaking the same way. I was still showing up, still functioning, and still doing what I needed to do, but something felt like it was missing. And that's when I realized that my grief was deeper than I had allowed myself to admit. I wasn't just grieving loss, I was grieving me. No one really prepares you for this part of grief. We always talk about sadness, we talk about the tears, we talk about missing people and your loved ones. But we don't talk enough about how grief can quietly take pieces of your identity. How it can make you question who you are now, what you want now, and what even matters anymore. You start looking at old pictures, your old accomplishments, old versions of yourself, and you wonder where that woman went. And when you don't have the language for that loss, you start judging yourself. You may even tell yourself that you should be over it by now, that you should be grateful, or that you shouldn't miss who you used to be. But identity loss is still loss, and your grief deserves that honesty. So I want to pause because this part means a lot. I am incredibly grateful for my children, for my family, and for the life I have today, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love who I'm becoming. And at the same time, I grieve the woman I was before grief entered my body and changed the way I move through the world. Those two things don't cancel each other out. See, loving your life now doesn't mean that you can't miss who you were before. Gratitude and grief can exist in the same space. And missing yourself doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. It just means that you're human, and that's completely normal. See, there came a moment, maybe not a big dramatic moment, but more of a quiet realization when I was reflecting on my career, on the rooms that I used to walk into with confidence, and on the way I used to speak without hesitation. And I realized that something had shifted. Not necessarily disappeared, but it definitely shifted. And instead of fighting that truth or forcing myself to get back to who I used to be, I finally let myself say it out loud. Damn, I miss her. That version of me mattered. She deserved to be acknowledged, not pushed to the side or forgotten. And here's something I learned through healing. That driven woman, that powerful speaker, that confident go-getter, she didn't disappear. She just went quiet. See, grief has a way of quietening parts of us, not because they're gone, but because they're processing and they're still being reshaped. Grief doesn't erase who you are. It changes how you carry yourself. And this is also where things like imposter syndrome can start to creep in. Because when your identity shifts, your confidence doesn't always catch up right away. You walk into rooms you once owned, and suddenly you feel like you need permission to be there again. You start second-guessing your voice, your ideas, your experience, not because you've lost your ability, but because grief has shaken your sense of certainty. And limiting beliefs sneak in quietly too. Thoughts like, maybe I'm not that person anymore, or maybe this season is over. Or maybe I don't get to take up space like I used to. But those thoughts are not the truth. They're often just grief talking, and that's what happens when your inner world has changed faster than your confidence has had time to rebuild. And sometimes healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been and allowing her to grow into this new season. This is why the idea of my upcoming book means so much to me, because grief has a way of clouding your memory of yourself. It makes you doubt your strength, your calling, your voice, and in those moments when comparison starts to creep in or exhaustion takes over, you don't need to reinvent yourself. You need to remember who you are already. You don't need to become her again. You don't need to rewind your life. You don't need to prove anything. You can honor who you were without trying to live there. See, that woman laid the foundation for who you are today. And the woman you are now carries wisdom she didn't yet have, and both of those matter. So I want you to ask yourself something. Who are you grieving? Is it the woman before the loss? Before the diagnosis? Before motherhood? Before everything changed? You don't have to rush to find yourself. Sometimes healing is simply allowing yourself to become. And as I've sat with all of this, I've realized something about myself too. I didn't lose who I was. I grew into someone more layered. Today, I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm an entrepreneur. I hold space for others while still learning how to hold space for myself. And some days, I still miss the woman I used to be. I miss how fearless she felt. I miss how quickly she moved. But I also recognize that the woman I am now carries things she never had to carry before. Responsibility, wisdom, and a deeper sense of purpose. I'm not less driven than I was back then. My drive just looks different. It's rooted in impact now, not just achievement. It's shaped by faith, by family, by grief, and by the understanding that success doesn't have to cost me my peace. And I think that's the part I want to honor the most. Not the version of me that could do everything, but the version of me that knows what matters. The woman I am today isn't a replacement for who I was. She's an evolution of her. And maybe for you, the woman you're grieving isn't about career at all. Maybe it's the version of you who laughed more easily, or trusted herself more, or had more energy. Maybe it's the woman you were before grief, before loss, before the diagnosis, before motherhood, or before life asks more of you than you were prepared for. And maybe you haven't let yourself say it out loud yet because you didn't want to sound ungrateful or dramatic or stuck in the past. But missing who you were doesn't mean you want to go backwards. It means you're honoring your story. I want you to think for a moment about the version of you that feels the furthest away right now. What does she love? What came naturally to her? What part of her do you miss the most? And as you think about her, notice what comes up. Not just sadness, but maybe pride or gratitude or even relief that she carried you through the season she was needed for. She served a purpose in your life, and she still matters. Now, I want you to think about who you are today. The woman listening to this episode. The woman who has survived things she never expected to carry. The woman who has learned and grown in ways she couldn't have imagined back then. You may not feel as loud or as driven or as certain, but you are wiser. You are more compassionate. You see more clearly now. You don't have to decide today who you're becoming. You don't have to figure out who or how to get your spark back. And you definitely don't have to pressure yourself to feel like yourself again. Sometimes healing looks like letting both versions of you sit at the table at the same time. The woman you were and the woman who you are now, and allowing them to coexist. So if today all you can do is acknowledge that you've changed, that you miss parts of yourself and that you're still here, that's enough. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with a woman who might be quietly grieving herself. And if you haven't yet, leaving a review helps another woman find this space when she needs it most. And until next time, keep highlighting your healing.